Hello, welcome to the University of Michigan School of Social Work Office of Field Education training for new field instructors. We're so excited that you've decided to be a field instructor with the University of Michigan. We'll be presenting you with this orientation today. I'm Christina Dadswell, an Assistant Director of Field Education, and I'm co-presenting with my colleague.
I am Talia Ingham, who is also a field faculty here at the University of Michigan.
Thanks so much for watching this video today. We hope that by the end of this video, you leave with a clear understanding of the following aspects of our program. Today, we'll orient you to who is a part of the field education team, what field education is in our program, the new student placing process and how we will refer new potential students to you, important policies to know, field instructor credentials, CSWE, which is the Council on Social Work Education, social work competencies that students must learn in field placement, field instructor responsibilities, including supervision, and student requirements and technical standards. These are all things we'll cover in today's presentation. I'd like to introduce our office, I'd like to introduce our office faculty and staff. First off, we have Erin Kong, who is the Director of Field Education, followed by myself and Dr. Yanni Robinson, who are Assistant Directors of Field Education. We have our administrative team, Sarah, Chi, and Claire, who you may be working with in terms of setting up the field agency that you're working with. And we have a team of faculty in our field education office, including Amy Brandt, Faye Adumbi, Miriam Connolly, Rizalva Osorio Cooksey, Stacy Peterson, Zainab Busi, Mona Berry, Rachel Naskow, Amy Vantine, and of course here with us today, Talia Ingham. So we really truly work as a team in the Office of Field Education to support the students and ensure that you as a field instructor feel supported from us as faculty as well. There's a number of people involved in the students' learning experience, so we will talk through each of them now. So of course, there's the students themselves and the field faculty, which is one of us here at U of M, who will be the professor for the students' field course and here to support you both throughout the students' experience. And then you, as the field instructor, are designated as one of the two boxes that has the arrows pointing to it. There are really two kinds of field instructors, but students are only required to have one primary field instructor who must be an MSW with 2 years of postgraduate experience. Some students also have a task supervisor or secondary field instructor. We call them by either name. If you are watching this video, you are either an MSW field instructor and the student's primary field instructor, or perhaps you're a different discipline, in which case you would be the student's task supervisor, secondary field instructor. Either way, we're so happy to partner with you. Also note that we typically use the word agency to refer to the place where the student is placed for their field placement. This is any business, company, nonprofit, clinic, university, hospital that's considered the student's field agency site. Although field instructors and task supervisors, of course, provide important input, ultimately, we, the field faculty, their course professors, are responsible for determining the student's grade at the end of the term. So as a new field instructor to the University of Michigan, here's the onboarding process and what it looks like for you. So first off, if your agency is also new to U of M, you or someone from your agency will have had an introductory meeting with a designee in our office as a first step. Secondly, any new field instructor will have to fill out new field instructor form. So if you have not done that already, please be sure to submit that to our administrative team. And you're also completing step 2 by watching this video today. Thirdly, you'll have a meet and greet via Zoom with the field faculty on our team that you will work with directly. This will be a fairly brief meeting just to discuss your paperwork, meet your field faculty member, and then of course answer any questions you might have after watching this video today. Fourth and lastly, if you don't already have a student lined up while you're watching this video, as many of you do not, then you can await an email from the faculty you meet with next steps about potential students. They will send you an email to your UMich email address with any students who are interested in being placed with you for their field placement. You'll also occasionally get emails from our admin team asking you when you're ready for potential students too. Please respond to these emails as your answers automatically update our system to let us know that you're hoping to have a student or not for the next round of placing that we do. Just to note, students should not be contacting you directly. Please refer them back to U of M field office if they inadvertently contact you directly about a placement option.
So today we want to talk a little bit about what field education is. Maybe you know because you've already been a field instructor before and are just new to working with the University of Michigan, or maybe this is the first time being a field instructor. Field education, as recognized by the Council on Social Work Education, the accrediting body for social work programs in the United States, stands as the cornerstone of social work education. It serves as the signature pedagogy embodying the essence of our program. It's the dynamic process by which students acquire and cultivate the essential skills and competencies around for effective social work practice. The point the point when theory aligns with real world application, or as the rubber meets the road. Students take many wonderful courses in our program where they learn theory and foundational practice. In addition, though, they also must take a course called Field Education, which is a course where they will earn course credit and have assignments to turn into us as their field faculty at the university. But rather than going to a lecture room each week, for their field course, they are placed for a certain number of hours per week with you as their field instructor at the agency where they can learn to apply that classroom knowledge and build concrete skills in real time. Your mentorship, training, and guidance helps them to understand many nuances of social work practice. Students often tell us how incredibly meaningful their field placement experience is for them. In their first term in field with you, in most cases, students are mostly expected to have training, like shadowing and learning experiences under your supervision. And then in subsequent terms, they can increasingly help the agency more and more as they increase in rigor and independence develops over time. And they truly help serve the individuals and families and communities that you're working with and advocating for at your agency. Perhaps you've heard the twist on the old proverb, practice makes progress, not perfection. That's what we hope you understand about field education, expecting their practice to make progress rather than perfection. Students are to be treated as students. They're not experts, so they're not expected to be perfect, right? They are learning, they're there to learn and to progress, make mistakes sometimes, and grow from them through your leadership and mentorship. So after you complete all of your onboarding steps we discussed earlier, if you do not already have a student, this is how we will send a student and the referral process will work. You as the field instructor will get what we call slot management email to your University of Michigan account. Please take a quick moment to fill them out since this lets us know whether we should allow students to view your agency profile as an option for that upcoming term or not, and whether you are open to new potential students. If you indicated yes in that slot management email, the next email you will receive at some point is an email that we have a potential new student for you. You can review their resume, their goal statement, as well as their field plan and how long they will be in field and for how many hours per week. After reviewing that information, you or the agency will decide whether you wish to interview them or not, and let the faculty who referred them to you know about your decision. If you interview and accept them, they will be officially placed with your agency and you will get a confirmation email with next steps at that point. You'll be asked to connect with them directly and discuss a field schedule that matches the number of hours that they need in field, as well as avoids conflicts with their schedule and course planning. Once their term officially begins, students should start orientation and training with your agency, as well as safety training, which is mandatory. It's required for your agency to provide a safety training that lets students know of any of the potential risks at the agency and protocol for the safety in the event of an emergency or other unexpected safety event. So that summarizes our placement process for new potential students. This is very much field instructor and agency led. So every step of the way, you decide whether you want to proceed with that student or not. The decision always rests with you, and we will work with you and support you during the process for placing new students. So it's important to know the following policies as they apply to the student's field placement experience. These policies are a part of your agency's affiliation agreement with the University of Michigan. First, agencies are expected to adhere to the FERPA laws for student privacy. It's expected that student privacy is respected both during the placement process and throughout their placement since your agency is affiliated with the University of Michigan, which is a federal agency and must abide by FERPA, which is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. Additionally, the University of Michigan is committed to a policy of equity or equal opportunity for all persons. Field instructors and others at agencies should never discriminate either during the placement process, interview, selection process, or during the time in which student is placed at an agency. The university and field site partners are also expected to adhere to the National Association of Social Work Code of Ethics, or core ethical responsibilities of the social work profession. Please review the linked policies for any additional information. Noting these are the requirements for an MSW field instructor who must be the primary field instructor on record for a student. This does not apply to a task supervisor of a different discipline who can be a secondary field instructor. Every student must have a primary field instructor who must possess a CSWE accredited Master's of Social Work degree and have completed at least 2 or more years of postgraduate experience. If the student's role is clinical practice, they will need a field instructor who also has an MSW license with a clinical emphasis, and we will require proof of an active clinical license in good standing during the application process. Additionally, it is a requirement of accreditation that students receive regular weekly supervision from an MSW. This is why a student's primary field instructor must be that MSW. Given that students are working towards earning their degree in the field of social work, it is imperative they receive supervision within the scope of the social work practice. Students may also receive supervision, instruction, guidance from a non-MSW. We understand the importance of interdisciplinary and interprofessional work and support students' opportunities to learn from various colleagues and roles, but there is still a requirement to have an MSW as that primary field instructor guiding students. Being a primary field instructor requires a commitment to provide at least 1 hour of dedicated structured student weekly supervision. And we recommend individual supervision, but some group supervisions are acceptable. So group supervision with employees does not count towards that 1 full hour requirement because the needs and the expectations of employees are to be considered different than that of that student learner role. Students need open, non-judgmental spaces to ask questions, discuss projects or cases, and get feedback in non-threatening environments, either in one-on-one or with other students who are also learners. Field instructors, both primary and secondary, must agree to use the University of Michigan email account for all educational activities. All important communications and links to things needing signatures will come directly to your University of Michigan email address. Please be checking that frequently or have those messages forwarded to a more regularly used email address for you. And feel free to reach out to our office on information on how to forward that email address if you would like to do that as well. Lastly, we also require that field instructors be committed to the 9 social work competencies, which we will discuss next, and engage in intentional efforts to help the students in integrating those 9 social work competencies into that placement experience. So the 9 competencies are what students work on across the semesters to be able to demonstrate their integration with the CSWE accrediting body standards. This is true for students in any type of social work in our program, which may cover micro, meso, or macro elements. Every class students take, including field, integrates these with that accompanying accreditation. So field education requires it also. All MSW students in accrediting programs across the country are trained with these in mind. These are all listed on the educational agreement, which is the student's main projects or assignments for their field course each term. And they will write about how they met each one of these while they were in field for that semester. They are as follows: demonstrate ethical and professional behavior, advance human and social, racial, economic, and environmental justice, engage anti-racism, diversity, equity, and inclusion in practice, engage in practice-informed research and research-informed practice, engage in policy practice, engage with individuals, families, groups, organizations, and communities, assess individuals, families, groups, organizations, and communities, intervene with those individuals, families, groups, organizations, and communities, and evaluate practice with individuals, families, groups, organizations, and communities. So these are the primary and the main assignments students will work on from semester to semester.
Now, considering field education in your role as a field instructor, when you take a look at this slide, if you're able to see it, there's a smaller arrow that says supervisor inside of it and a larger arrow that says teacher inside of it. So you might notice that supervisor is present, but the teacher role is larger. That's key here. While both roles are essential, to your role as a field instructor, the teaching role in field education is more important and more involved. So I'd like to talk a little bit about both. As a supervisor, your focus is on evaluating the student's performance and ensuring that tasks and responsibilities are completed. However, as a teacher, you go deeper. You're crafting individualized learning experiences and assignments that align with the student's professional objectives. You're helping connect academic theory with practice, and you're helping them build their competencies and reflect on their experiences. Your role as a teacher has a profound impact on student learning and personal development. The time and effort that you invest in shaping their learning experiences help them not only complete tasks, but grow as professionals in the field of social work. So let's take a moment to reflect on your own educational journey. I think we need to click one more time. Thank you. So when you think about these questions, I'd just like to take a moment for you to reflect. Who have been the great teachers or supervisors in your own life, in your own experience? What did they do well? What didn't work? And what kind of field instructor or teacher do you want to be? When we do these trainings live, which we often do, some of the things we hear about, as far as the answers to these questions, I created a list because we often get these similar answers. The person provided clear, actionable feedback. Or my supervisor created a safe and inclusive space for learning or working. They offered consistent support and availability. They listened actively and valued my opinions. They were patient and approachable. I felt I could come to them. They challenged me with high expectations and pushed me to excel, while at the same time being compassionate and providing guidance and room for mistakes. I'd just like for you to kind of think about that, and as you sort of create your own style of supervision with your students and find ways to support them in your own way. U of M offers different course plans for different students. So we want to let you know that not all of the students that we would send your way will have the same field plan. A student's field schedule is typically a 2 or 3 day schedule each week, so either 16 hours per week or 24 hours per week, depending on the student's individual education plan and what they are registered for in terms of course credits. It's the total hours at the end of the semester, though, that are really the most important to pay attention to rather than the hours each week. So 16 or 24 hours is the average number of hours per week that they would be in field education, but students are given the total hours they are required to meet based on their credit hours, and it's their responsibility to ensure that they obtain those total hours for the term. Field schedules are expected to follow the university academic calendar, which we've linked here. Students are not expected to attend field when the university is on break or in between their terms. If a break or holiday, for example, falls on a field day that the student is supposed to be there, the student is supposed to inform you as their field instructor of this plan, and then create a plan to make up those hours in a different day and time. We let students know that most organizations do not follow the academic calendar, and it's their responsibility to communicate with you as a field instructor about their schedule and plan in advance for these things. Students are not required to create an hours log to share with the university. They are required to create an hours log to share with their field instructor and their agency. So they don't need to submit it to us, but they do need to submit it to you on a regular basis. So we know some field site agencies have a process that they have students follow to keep track of their time. And so we let students know that they should follow the organization agency's expectations on the time log. It's the student's responsibility to keep track of their hours, and we encourage them to use a format to keep record of this. We share a template they can use if they like. It's a Google Sheets doc, but they can use any format that works for them, and as long as it's approved by their field instructor and agency. At the end of each term, students are required to enter the total number of field hours they will have completed in that term, and they enter that into their educational agreement, which we'll talk about later. And you'll be expected to sign in that agreement and approve that number of hours that they've completed.
So there are really only 4 things that you as a field instructor will need to do for each one of those semesters. 2 of them are important documents at the beginning and the end of the term. So the other 2 are meetings that happen in between those 2. The only 2 times you will need to actually log into the U of M system are at the beginning and the end of the terms. So both times you will get an email prompting you to click on a link and log in and view the form that needs your review or your signature. And again, that will be through your University of Michigan email. At the beginning of the term, the form needed to be signed is called the placement verification form. At the end of the semester, the form needing to be signed is the student's educational agreement. In between, you will provide orientation for the student, and then throughout the term, need to be meeting weekly at minimum with their student to provide supervision, as well as meeting once per term for what we call a site visit, which is a meeting with you, the student, and the field faculty who is the student's professor for the field course at the university. These 4 things happen every term, every year, for every student. Students have multiple terms of field, and the process repeats for each semester. Next, we'll share a little bit more detail about each of these 4 things on your checklist. At the start of each student's term, there's a form that needs to be signed. This placement verification form is the agreement or contract at the start of each term for student's placement. The student starts it and you will sign it once it's completed by the student. It'll essentially ask you to verify where the student's placed and their schedule, as well as verify if you provided orientation, safety training for them that we discussed earlier. We ask students to bring this to supervision meetings and to discuss and sign with you, as they may have questions about answering some of the questions that are on the form. Note that students are covered by university malpractice while in field placement. Once a student submitted their portion of the verification form, you will receive a notification in your University of Michigan email inviting you to click on a link and review and sign off on the form. After you sign off on the student's PVF or placement verification, this will then be shared with our office for final review and approval.
Next, we'll talk about supervision sessions. An expectation is that students will receive weekly scheduled supervision, like we talked about before, to review, reflect, and discuss issues related to their field placement and their competency development. We encourage inclusion of administrative information, educational opportunities, and debriefs and reflection as a part of supervision time. Again, this can be one-to-one or in a group format with other students. Some placements are more at the elbow learning, and think of this kind of as ongoing daily supervision if they're shadowing pretty frequently. This practice can be very beneficial. It's not required. And we also emphasize the need for set time on a weekly basis as well. That way they're able to focus on specific supervision time for that student with goals and tasks on an agenda. Students may struggle asking for a set supervision time, especially if they're physically with the field instructor much of the time. So we ask that you let the student know that this is an important time that you too prioritize, with the understanding that sometimes that scheduled time has to be adjusted given client or organization needs. There are really three components of discussion during the supervision meeting. They're shown here on this slide: professional growth and identity, administrative, and education. There's likely is not enough time to cover all three of these areas each week, but focusing time on each of these over the course of the term is very beneficial. It can also be helpful to have an expectation of how your student will be prepared for supervision and share this with the student. For example, do you want them to prepare an agenda for supervision and send it to you before supervision? Do you want them to have 2 cases to present? One that's going well or one that needs some guidance and discussion, for example? Do you want them to have some reading to discuss during supervision? Having an agenda is also great because it can be helpful for you to have an agenda to look back on when you're reviewing the student's progress over the course of the term and working on their educational agreement. I'd like to talk about each of those 3 areas I discussed that are a part of supervision. So first, administrative issues would be just things that require guidance on the day-to-day. So things related to their assignments and tasks, not necessarily social work related administrative concerns, and discussing standards and expectations and policies at the agency, such as the technology policy and who to contact if they're going to be late or cannot come to field one day, things like that. Also, professional growth and identity is a really important part of supervision time. So this can involve understanding technical standards of professional conduct for the student, as well as integrating the NASW Code of Ethics into practice. Also listening to the student's overall career goals and helping them think of some ways to gain skills there to meet them. So these 2 should take up a bit of time in supervision, and they're vitally important aspects of supervision. The next part, the learning component, education, is the primary piece in supervision, and that's where you're able to discuss social work competencies and how they connect to the work the students are doing in the field. Also offer and receive feedback regarding performance. They really need feedback in a positive, strength-based way. One helpful way to give feedback without causing distress is to offer some positive feedback, followed by specific feedback on what needs to happen or change, followed by more positive feedback at the end. This sandwich method tends to help students feel valued, but also learn what to do better. Feedback is not really just a component. It's actually the most critical component to the learning experience. But here's the thing, it's not a one-way street. We're not just here to dole out feedback. As mentors, we're creating a relationship, an environment where we want feedback from our students too. So we hope that you're open to feedback from your students as well. Also, a part of supervision is mentorship and modeling of social work practice. Students tell us that they appreciate the most when their field instructors are genuine and transparent about their own mistakes, their own uncertainties and vulnerabilities, so that students can understand it's okay to not have always a concrete answer or have all the answers. And this helps them learn to rely on using the frameworks that they learn in courses and in their work with you to solve problems. Also, part of supervision is encouraging some independence, but also in turn giving support before and after that independence, taking time to process mistakes and learn and give feedback. Also, skill development discussions and assigning tasks that help hone their social work master level skills, and thinking about your learning objectives for your student and how they need to progress over time, from exposure to immersion to then more supervised independence. You will determine the pace and approach that best fits your student, because really all students begin in different places. Integrate learning from coursework. That's another piece that you can be discussing during supervision. How are they applying what they're learning in their courses to their work in field practicum? Lastly, I think one of the most important things is to support the development of critical thinking in practice.
So next we'll talk about the site visit, which happens once per term. And again, is that meeting between the student, their field faculty, and you as the field instructor. So site visits are really an essential part of the student evaluation, as well as preparation for students to speak to their experiences and that skill development that they'll be utilizing and working on. Not only does this support and emphasize their learning, it's also really helpful to prepare for future interviews as well. Site visits are held each semester with the student, the field instructor, or instructors if there's another or secondary field instructor as well. If others in the organization have been heavily involved in the students' learning, such as task supervisors, they're also welcomed and encouraged to attend these visits because that's a wonderful time to integrate that feedback. Visits are held either in person or via Zoom. So while a field site can be scheduled at any time, most often these are scheduled throughout the mid-late part of each semester. That way students have enough experience. The student has the responsibility of coordinating everyone's schedules to determine the date and the time of the visit between everyone. Most field faculty create site visit availability on our calendars, and students can choose from the available slots. Students are to connect with their field faculty if the times the field faculty has don't are listed do not fit with the field instructor's availability, so that other times can be identified. A number of topics can be discussed during the field site, and the field faculty will want to hear from the student about what they've been engaging in and how they are connecting what they are doing in field to those social work competencies. So we'll want to hear about what they're noticing or aware of in regards to privilege, oppression, diversity, and social justice within their experience at field. We'll also be looking for the student to speak about how they're integrating their academic learning, right? And we will want to hear how they are utilizing that supervision opportunity as well. These are just a handful of areas we may ask about within that field site visit. So while most questions can be directed to the student, participation and feedback from the field instructor throughout these visits is very essential. Please do not wait for a site visit to bring up any concerns. Our hope is that students will never be surprised by feedback shared during that site visit time. So if you have questions or concerns about anything at any time, please contact us at that time when you're having those concerns. We will want to be able to provide information, assistance, and supports as early as possible if needs arise. We may have additional discussions of these during that site visit, but please don't wait for the site visit to address those concerns.
Lastly, we will talk about the educational agreement that is due near the end of the term. So field makes up 25% of a student's MSW experience. And as we said at the beginning, it's really the signature pedagogy according to our accrediting body with the Council on Social Work Education. Each student's main project for their field course is the educational agreement, which you will sign near the end of the term. But I want to tell you a bit more about it because it serves as a vital part in guiding a student's learning and development across the 9 social work competencies while they're in field placement the entire time. This assignment is turned in at the end, but it's really a living document that has multiple steps for the student, and students work on it throughout the term. At the beginning of the term, students, along with your help, will select one assignment for each of the 9 competencies that they will focus on for that term. Throughout the term, they'll reflect on their engagement with that assignment and describe their professional development over the term. Then at the end of the term, the reflections on their learning experience for each of those competencies will be written about in the what, so what, now what format and shared with you. Once they finish that written portion and rate themselves as well on how they've been doing, you'll receive an email in your UMISH account for your review, your feedback, and student performance ratings. So this serves as a reflection tool for students, but it's also an end of the term evaluation tool for you to evaluate the student as you've been their field instructor. We encourage you to discuss with and engage your student in the evaluation process, including the ratings you give the student. Performance in field, as well as the practice reflections, should be considered when selecting the rating for each competency. The educational agreement asks that you review the student's writing and you rate the student as well on each of the 9 competencies near the end of the term. The students also, like I said, rate themselves at that time too, and you'll rate them on each of the 9 competencies. There's actually a spot on the educational agreement that links you to a description of the ratings in detail. And they are not competent, limited competence, emerging competence, competence, and advanced competence. As a general rule of thumb, we expect that students have competencies more in the limited, emerging, and competence range as they're starting in field, and they move more into the emerging competence, and even sometimes occasionally advanced competence for specific competencies. Just note that advanced competence is only used rarely, if at all. If it is used, most likely it would only be in their final term of field. If there are significant concerns in many of the 9 areas, we would not expect to see limited competence or not competent ratings on an educational agreement as a surprise at the end of the term. In those situations when lower ratings are warranted, which is not often, but we would have expected you already communicated your concerns with both the student and their field faculty at the time of the concern. I would say a good rule of thumb is that if a student is doing well and you don't have concerns about their development and their progress, they should be receiving mostly emerging competence and competence ratings. That's sort of what we expect. This is an example of what it looks like on when you're opening up the educational agreement. It includes the student's information, and then it lists the 9 competencies and what the student planned to work on for each one. It doesn't show it here, but it also shows what the student has written about that competency and the work that they've done, and you'll be able to review that as well. As part of their expectation in field, students are expected to adhere to the technical standards of our program. So actually, as part of their admittance to our overall program, all students receive and have to agree to follow the School of Social Work technical standards. It's important that you as a field instructor are also aware of these technical standards, as this is a measure that we are all able to use together as we work with students. It's often the first policy we look to when concerns are rising, if they do. So these standards not only focus on academic performance, but they also emphasize abilities and attributes that are essential for our profession. These include communication, so timeliness, effective verbal and nonverbal skills, and the ability to listen objectively. Also, intellectual and cognitive skills, so critical thinking, application of problem-solving skills, knowledge to inform practice, willingness for reflection, and taking responsibility for actions and considering the impact of their actions on other people. This also includes being punctual and dependable, managing time appropriately, and observing deadlines, as well as accepting and integrating constructive feedback in field education. It also includes emotional and behavioral readiness, which includes seeking appropriate help to ensure personal needs do not interfere with professional performance, adapting to change, and maintaining respectful relationships and progression of the social work competencies. So students can participate in the graduate social work program as long as they abide by these technical standards and conduct policy.
So we also wanted to talk a little bit about students with disabilities. People with disabilities make up 20% of our general population. So disability is a part of human diversity, and there are many visible and also invisible disabilities. So there are times students will request accommodations in their field placement setting. If they do, either they or we will let you know about them so that you can be aware and ensure that you have the ability to accommodate those needs. An accommodation is a modification or adjustment that enables students with disability to fully participate. So accommodations are designed to provide equal access without altering the fundamental requirements of the course or program. Accommodations support equal opportunity and access, not special privilege. They are based on individual needs and may include both academic and field placement adjustments. It's important that students with disabilities are not met with ableist types of responses regarding their accommodations, such as being asked continuously to prove the need for accommodations, questioned whether accommodations are actually necessary, or insinuating that accommodations are a favor or privilege rather than a right. Providing accommodations is a legal and ethical obligation rooted in federal laws like the American with Disability Act and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act as well. Some examples of accommodations might include ensuring the workplace is physically accessible, readers or interpreters, which the university often providing a quiet workspace or reducing noise distractions and lighting, adjusting work schedules or in-person versus remote work. Various hardwares and software tools, such as, again, screen readers, which is something, again, the university may be able to provide support on as well, or attendance modification potentially as well. If a student has approved accommodations with the university they wish to use in field, we will let you know and what those are to discuss it with you to provide that support to you. So, a few notes about creating and maybe managing expectations early, which can prevent many difficulties in cases we find. Students may not have professional experience prior to starting their MSW program, and things that may seem common sense to field instructors is actually new experiences to many students in our student body. Having early conversations about your expectations can help avoid unintended conflict down the road. In early days of the student's placement, please talk with them about what to do if they're not able to follow their regular schedule due to illness, if they're running late to placement potentially, if there's bad weather conditions, or if the student is having transportation problems. What should they do if they're confused or need help? What is the expectation for how they're to communicate? Do you want them to email, text you on your phone, call into the main office or organization? Please also just let them know how you will communicate with them if you have a change in scheduling as well. It may also be very helpful to give guidance to the students about how to be present for things that are happening in the organization as well. For example, what is your expectation for how you want the student to be present in your meetings? Do you want them to just listen? If you want them to be more actively engaged and participant in the meeting or in the encounter, when and how would it be appropriate for them to do this? This also shifts and changes as students advance throughout their time with you. So this can often be revised throughout the process. Providing this guidance can be very helpful in the student's ability to gain confidence about their role and can potentially avoid unintended conflict. So if there's a difficulty, what should you do if your student is struggling? First off, if you notice a sudden change in performance, a check-in to see if they're okay makes the most sense. Also, it's important to know that if it's okay to give your student feedback that is timely, clear, specific, non-judgmental, and actionable. Giving feedback can be hard. Sometimes we think of it as mean and can avoid giving and receiving it at times. Or we use the hint and hope method. We've all been there, dropping subtle hints and crossing our fingers, hoping our message gets across. But we can do better. It's actually worse for students when a field instructor avoids their own discomfort in giving feedback, and then the student has a higher likelihood to fail. Instead, delivering effective feedback on the spot using the situation, behavior, impact, or SBI method. SBI method, it's one of the best ways to give feedback, again, through that modeling. When you encounter a situation, identify the challenge and the expectations, the action taken, and then discuss the results with the impact. Why was this a problem? Who did it affect? You're not just giving feedback, you're delivering it with precision and purpose. So in situation, setting the stage with precision and clarity. So avoid ambiguity by providing specific context. For instance, maybe during the team presentation last week is a specific example. The behavior aspect directly address maybe the observed behavior, ensuring focus on actions witnessed maybe personally rather than through others. Steer clear of assumptions or subjective judgments. For example, during the team presentation last week, I noticed that you seemed unprepared and struggled to articulate key points. Then noting the impact, emphasizing the repercussion of the behavior, using I or we to convey the broader implications. For example, as a result, the overall impression on the client was one of uncertainty, potentially jeopardizing our relationship with them. Throughout this process, the key is to seek constructive solutions rather than placing blame. Our goal is to nurture growth and improvement within the field education journey. This holistic approach ensures that feedback becomes a transformative force for both the student and for our field instructors. Also, contact your students assigned field faculty. Please do not wait. We can partner with you in coaching students. We can meet with you individually to talk about what we've done in similar situations with other students to support you. Just know that you are not alone in this, and you're not getting the student in trouble by speaking with us about those either. If concerns remain and you need a field faculty to be more involved, if you need a field faculty to be more involved in the process, you can tell the field instructor, the student's field faculty, that you want to implement a performance learning plan. You would meet with the student and their field faculty to make a written performance learning plan that clearly delineates what are their areas for growth and how they will specifically achieve them. This is not done often, but it can be a really helpful tool for some students in which they get feedback in writing, and then they can excel in meeting those clear expectations successfully. After all, they are student learners. We appreciate the time, effort, and energy that it takes to mentor our students as field instructors. As a thank you, we want to make sure that you know these resources are available to you as benefits of being part of the University of Michigan's affiliation as a field instructor. So first and foremost, we do offer free access to our U of M continuing education catalog for up to 1 year after hosting a student. So 1 year after the student graduates from the program. Access to the U of M library, which you can access through the links listed, is one of the largest academic library systems in the country, and the numbers are impressive. As of 2024, the U of M library system holds over 14 million physical and digital items, giving you free access to many resources that would typically require payment or journal subscriptions to access. Additionally, for those that are a little more local, there are M card discounts for those that use a physical M card around the area. Additionally, contributing to the next generation of social work colleagues, I think, is one of the greatest areas. Our partners often share that students bring refreshing perspectives, new ideas, and innovative approaches that can enrich your practice and inspire your team.
Yes, our field instructors give so much positive feedback about having our students and are so excited to have them there at their agency. So we really hope that you have that same experience too, and enjoy the newness that they bring and the perspectives that they bring and are able to help with. So please know that any questions that came up for you during this presentation, they can be directed to our field office email here or phone number, or if you are already working directly with someone in our office, you can connect with them, of course. We're so appreciative that you took the time to watch this today and thankful for your partnership in teaching and mentoring our wonderful social work students. You should have access to these slides so that you can review them anytime or utilize the links on the slides for further information. Thanks again for joining us today, and take care.